Chapter 13. Episode 13, Festival Fiasco. Sabrina and Noah arrived at the festival grounds, their eyes widening at the scene of magical chaos erupting before them. The once cheerful carnival had transformed into a surreal battleground of conflicting seasonal energies. Ring-toss rings whizzed through the air like sentient frisbees, narrowly missing startled festival-goers. At the whack-a-mole booth, the plastic moles had come to life, popping up with angry expressions and swatting back at players with their tiny padded mallets. "This is worse than I thought," Noah muttered, ducking as a stray ring sailed over his head. Sabrina nodded grimly. "We need to contain this fast before someone gets hurt." As they spoke, the decorative war between Halloween and spring intensified. Jack-o'-lanterns rolled across the ground, their carved mouths opening wide to launch a barrage of seeds at delicate flower arrangements. The flowers retaliated, their stems elongating like whips to lash back at the pumpkins. Sabrina's mind raced. She spotted a group of her magic students huddled near a cotton candy stand, looking both terrified and exhilarated by the chaos around them. "Time for an emergency lesson," she said, hurrying over to them. "Listen up, everyone. We need to contain these magical outbursts. Form teams of 2 and focus on specific areas. Use containment spells we've practiced, and if anything gets out of hand, signal for help immediately." The students nodded, their faces set with determination as they paired up and spread out across the festival grounds. Sabrina felt a surge of pride as she watched them work, their young faces scrunched in concentration as they wove spells to calm the animated carnival games and subdue the warring decorations. Meanwhile, Noah sprang into action, his sheriff's training kicking in. He coordinated with the local police force, setting up a perimeter around the festival and organizing the evacuation of non-magical citizens. "Remember, we're dealing with a gas leak," Noah instructed his officers, providing a cover story to explain the strange occurrences. "Keep people calm and get them to safety as quickly as possible." As Sabrina and Noah worked to manage the crisis, Quill darted between trouble spots, its quills glowing with absorbed magical energy. The hedgehog familiar seemed to instinctively understand its role, using its newfound abilities to temporarily stabilize affected areas. Sabrina marveled at Quill's efficiency. "Good job, little one," she murmured as Quill scampered past, leaving a trail of calmed magical disturbances in its wake. Despite their best efforts, new outbreaks of magical chaos continued to erupt. A carousel sprang to life, its painted horses leaping off their poles to gallop through the crowd. The Ferris wheel began to spin backwards at an alarming speed, its seats transforming into giant leaves and jack-o'-lanterns. Sabrina realized they needed to do more to hide the most obvious magical occurrences from public view. Concentrating intensely, she began to weave complex illusion spells. To the untrained eye, the rampaging carousel horses appeared as loose balloons, while the transformed Ferris wheel seemed to be part of an elaborate light show. "Nice work," Noah said, appearing at her side. "But we can't keep this up forever. Any ideas on how to stop this at the source?" Sabrina shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. "Without the complete artifact, I don't know how to restore the balance. We're just treating symptoms right now." As they spoke, a new disturbance caught their attention. The festival's petting zoo had taken on a decidedly magical twist. Goats were sprouting leafy antlers, while rabbits hopped about on spring-like legs, bouncing impossibly high. "I'll handle this," Noah said, hurrying towards the petting zoo. "You keep working on those illusions," Sabrina nodded, turning her attention back to maintaining the magical veils hiding the worst of the chaos from public view. She could feel the strain of sustaining such complex spells, but she gritted her teeth and pressed on. The secrecy of Hallowville's magical nature depended on her efforts. As the night wore on, Sabrina, Noah, and their impromptu team of magical first responders worked tirelessly to contain the escalating situation. Every time they managed to stabilize one area, new magical disturbances would pop up elsewhere, stretching their resources to the limit. Sabrina's students showed remarkable skill and adaptability, quickly learning to anticipate and counter the unpredictable magical outbursts. Noah's calm leadership kept panic at bay among the non-magical citizens as the evacuation proceeded smoothly, despite the bizarre occurrences. Quill continued its tireless efforts. zipping from one hot spot to another. The little hedgehog's quills now glowed with an intense, multicolored light, a visual representation of the conflicting magical energies it had absorbed throughout the night. As dawn approached, Sabrina and Noah found themselves back to back in the center of the festival grounds, surrounded by the aftermath of their night-long battle against magical chaos. The once cheerful carnival now looked like a surreal dreamscape, with remnants of both Halloween and spring magic scattered about. Exhausted but still alert, they surveyed the scene. The immediate crisis seemed to have passed, but both knew this was only a temporary reprieve. Without a permanent solution to restore Hallowville's magical balance, they were merely delaying the inevitable. "We did it," Noah said, his voice hoarse from a night of shouting orders, for now at least. Sabrina nodded, too tired to speak. She reached down to scoop up Quill, who had collapsed at her feet, its quills still faintly glowing. As the first rays of sunlight began to peek over the horizon, Sabrina knew their work was far from over. The festival had become a testing ground, pushing their abilities to manage a full-scale magical crisis to the limit. They had passed this test, but greater challenges lay ahead. With a deep breath, Sabrina straightened her shoulders. "Come on," she said to Noah. "We need to gather everyone and plan our next move. This is just the beginning." As the magical chaos continued to unfold around them, Sabrina's keen eyes caught a flash of something unusual amidst the swirling colors and shifting shapes. There, near the cotton candy stand, she spotted a familiar face, Councilwoman Iris Bloom, a prominent member of Hallowville's magical community. But it wasn't Iris's presence that made Sabrina's heart race. It was the object in her hand. A piece of the artifact, unmistakable in its pulsing, otherworldly glow, rested in Iris's palm. The councilwoman's face was a mask of concentration as she deftly manipulated the fragment, sending out waves of magic that amplified and directed the surrounding disturbances. Sabrina's mind raced back to the heated debates she'd witnessed. Iris had been one of the most vocal advocates for embracing spring magic, arguing passionately for a new era in Hallowville. Now, it seemed, she had decided to take matters into her own hands. Without taking her eyes off Iris, Sabrina reached out and tugged on Noah's sleeve. When he turned, she nodded subtly in the councilwoman's direction. Noah's eyes widened in recognition, and he gave a slight nod of understanding. Together, they began to weave through the crowded festival grounds, careful to maintain a discreet distance from their target. It wasn't easy. The chaos of the event provided both cover and obstacles. Sabrina had to duck under a stream of enchanted paper lanterns, while Noah sidestepped a group of children whose ice cream cones had sprouted tiny wings. As they followed, they witnessed Iris using the artifact with alarming precision. With a flick of her wrist, she caused a patch of Halloween pumpkins to transform into a riot of spring blossoms. Another gesture sent a wave of warm, fragrant air through a section of the festival that had been dominated by spooky autumnal decorations. Sabrina concentrated, reaching out with her magical senses. She could feel the unique energy signature of the artifact piece, a discordant note in the symphony of magic surrounding them. It left a trail, faint but discernible, allowing her to track Iris's movements even when the councilwoman momentarily vanished from sight. As they drew closer, fragments of conversation reached their ears. Iris was speaking to someone through a magical communication charm, her words partially obscured by the festival's noise. The convergence point. Use the festival's energy. Permanent shift. The words sent a chill down Sabrina's spine. Their suspicions were correct. Iris and her allies were planning to use the heightened magical atmosphere of the festival to enact a permanent change in Hallowville's magical balance. Quill, sensing the urgency of the situation, took matters into its own tiny paws. The magical hedgehog scampered ahead, creating small but effective distractions. A suddenly animated stuffed animal here, a briefly levitating popcorn bucket there. Each incident drew eyes away from Sabrina and Noah, allowing them to close the gap without attracting attention. They were mere yards away when Iris suddenly stiffened, her head turning sharply. For a heart-stopping moment, Sabrina thought they'd been spotted, but Iris's gaze swept past them, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "We've been made," Noah whispered, his hand instinctively moving to where his badge would normally be. Iris began to move with purpose, her steps quick and deliberate. She wove through the crowd with the grace of a deer, using the festival's layout to her advantage. Sabrina and Noah gave chase, but it quickly became clear that this was no simple pursuit. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves face to face with a mirror maze that hadn't been there moments before. Iris's handiwork, no doubt. They plunged in, only to find the reflections shifting and changing, making it impossible to distinguish reality from illusion. Sabrina closed her eyes, focusing on the artifact's energy signature. "This way," she said, grabbing Noah's hand and pulling him through a seemingly solid mirror that dissolved at her touch. They emerged to find Iris casting a spell that brought a grove of trees to life. The suddenly animate oaks and maples reached out with gnarled branches, forming a barrier between them and their quarry. Noah didn't miss a beat. He pulled out his badge, which glowed with a soft light. "By the authority of Hallowville law enforcement, stand down!" he commanded. The trees hesitated, their branches wavering. Sabrina seized the moment, casting a counterspell that caused the trees to erupt in a spectacular array of autumn colors. The sudden shift seemed to confuse the enchantment, and the barrier dissolved in a shower of red and gold leaves. But Iris was already gone, leaving behind only a fading trail of magical energy. Sabrina knelt down, allowing Quill to scramble up onto her shoulder. The hedgehog's quills vibrated, resonating with the artifact's energy. "We can't lose her," Sabrina said, her voice filled with determination. "She'll lead us to their base of operations." Noah nodded grimly. "And maybe to the rest of the artifact pieces." With Quill as their magical compass and Sabrina's growing ability to sense the artifact's unique energy, they set off in pursuit. The festival faded behind them as they followed the trail into the less crowded areas of Hallowville, each step bringing them closer to uncovering the full extent of the plot, threatening their town's magical balance. As they pressed on, Sabrina couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something bigger than they had imagined. The artifact's power, Iris's determination, the fragile balance of Hallowville's magic, it all seemed to be converging into a moment of crisis that would determine the fate of everything they held dear. The magical trail led Sabrina, Noah, and Quill to the outskirts of Hallowville, where an abandoned greenhouse loomed against the darkening sky. Its glass panes were clouded with years of neglect, but a faint, pulsing light emanated from within, hinting at the magical activity inside. As they approached, Sabrina held out a hand, stopping Noah in his tracks. "Wait," she whispered, her eyes narrowing. "Look." A shimmering, nearly invisible barrier surrounded the greenhouse, its magical energy creating a subtle distortion in the air. Noah reached out, his fingers stopping just short of the barrier as if pressing against an invisible wall. "Any ideas?" he asked, glancing at Sabrina. She nodded, a look of concentration crossing her face. "I think I can create a small opening. It won't last long, but it should be enough for us to slip through undetected." Sabrina closed her eyes, her hands moving in intricate patterns as she wove her magic. The air in front of them shimmered and rippled, and a small opening appeared in the barrier, just large enough for them to pass through one at a time. "Quickly," Sabrina urged, and they ducked through the opening, feeling the tingle of magic wash over them as they crossed the threshold. Inside, the greenhouse was a far cry from its abandoned exterior. It was a veritable jungle of plant life, with vines and leaves and flowers of all descriptions crowding every available surface. But this was no ordinary greenhouse. The plants here exhibited strange, magical properties that defied the laws of nature. As they took their first steps into the greenhouse, Sabrina felt a sudden shift in the air around her. She looked down to see her feet sinking into a patch of moss that seemed to be growing and spreading at an accelerated rate. Nearby, Noah was staring in wonder at a tree that was rapidly cycling through seasons, its leaves budding, growing, changing color, and falling in a matter of seconds. "Be careful," Sabrina warned, her voice hushed. "The magic here is unstable." They began to navigate through the greenhouse, each step bringing new surprises and challenges. In one section, they found themselves moving in slow motion as if time itself had slowed to a crawl. In another, gravity seemed to fluctuate wildly, causing them to float momentarily before being pulled back to the ground with greater force. Quill proved invaluable in their exploration. The magical hedgehog's quills would stand on end, vibrating with energy when they approached hidden magical traps. More than once, Quill's warnings prevented them from stepping into areas where the magical instability was at its most dangerous. As they delved deeper into the greenhouse, they began to notice signs of recent activity. Workstations were set up among the plants, covered in notes and diagrams. Sabrina examined one of the pages, her eyes widening as she recognized the complex magical formulas. "These are experiments," she said, showing the page to Noah. "They're trying to combine spring and Halloween energies in ways I've never seen before." Noah frowned, looking around at the various setups. But why? What's the purpose? Sabrina's gaze fell on a particularly intricate diagram. I think they're trying to replicate the artifact's power. Look at this. It's a theoretical model of how the artifact manipulates seasonal energies." As they continued their exploration, the magical energy in the greenhouse grew more intense. The air itself seemed to crackle with power, and the plants around them reacted more violently to their presence, some reaching out with grasping vines or emitting strange, glowing pollen. Quill's quills were now in a constant state of agitation, the hedgehog clearly sensing the buildup of magical energy. Sabrina felt it too, a pressure building in the air, like the moments before a thunderstorm breaks. "We must be getting close," Noah whispered, his hand instinctively moving to where his badge would normally be. Sabrina nodded, her own magic responding to the intense energies surrounding them. She could feel the artifact's unique signature growing stronger with each step they took. As they rounded a corner, they came upon a clearing in the dense foliage. In the center stood a makeshift altar, covered in magical symbols and glowing with an otherworldly light. And there, hovering above the altar, was another piece of the artifact, pulsing with energy. Sabrina and Noah exchanged a glance, silently acknowledging the gravity of their discovery. They had found what they were looking for, but they both knew that retrieving the artifact piece wouldn't be easy. The magical protections around it were likely to be formidable, and there was still no sign of Iris or any other members of the opposing faction. Quill chirped softly, drawing their attention to a narrow path leading away from the clearing. The hedgehog's quills were pointing in that direction, suggesting that there was more to discover. "What do you think?" Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sabrina hesitated, torn between the desire to secure the artifact piece and the need to uncover more about their opponent's plans. After a moment's consideration, she made her decision. "We need more information," she said. "Let's see where that path leads. We might find Iris or learn more about what they're planning." Noah nodded in agreement, and together they started down the path, with Quill leading the way. The magical energy continued to intensify as they moved deeper into the heart of the greenhouse, and Sabrina couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of uncovering something crucial to Hallowville's fate. As they pressed on, the overgrown plants seemed to part before them, revealing a winding path through the magical chaos. The air hummed with energy, and strange lights danced at the edges of their vision. Whatever lay ahead, Sabrina knew it would be pivotal in their quest to restore balance to Hallowville's magic. As Sabrina, Noah, and Quill reached the heart of the greenhouse, they found themselves in a vast circular chamber. At its center stood Iris, the artifact user, surrounded by a whirlwind of magical energy. She was in the midst of a complex ritual, her hands weaving intricate patterns in the air as she chanted in an ancient, arcane language. Iris turned to face them, her eyes glowing with an unnatural green light. "Ah, Sabrina," she said, her voice echoing with power. "I had a feeling you'd find your way here eventually." Sabrina stepped forward, her own magic crackling at her fingertips. "Iris, what are you doing? This isn't right." Iris laughed, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. "What I'm doing is ushering in a new era for Hallowville. Imagine it, Sabrina, a town in perpetual spring, free from the darkness of Halloween. With this ritual, I'll harness the full power of spring magic and become the most powerful witch in history." Noah moved to stand beside Sabrina, his stance protective. "You can't do this, Iris. It goes against everything Hallowville stands for." "Hallowville will adapt," Iris snarled. "And those who can't, well, change can be difficult." Without warning, Iris launched a barrage of magical energy towards them. Sabrina reacted instantly, throwing up a shield of Halloween-themed magic. Jack-o'-lanterns materialized in the air, absorbing the brunt of Iris's attack. The greenhouse erupted into chaos as the magical duel began in earnest. Iris commanded the plants around her, sending vines and thorns hurtling towards Sabrina and Noah. Sabrina countered with her own spells, conjuring spectral bats that sliced through the vegetation. Noah, drawing on his knowledge of Hallowville's magical laws, anticipated Iris's moves. "Sabrina, watch out!" he called, pulling her aside as a burst of spring magic erupted from the ground where she had been standing. Quill darted between them, its quills glowing brightly as it absorbed stray magical energy. The hedgehog redirected the harmful magic, creating a protective barrier around Sabrina and Noah. As the battle raged on, the artifact piece on the altar began to react to the conflict. Its power fluctuated wildly, sending out pulses of energy that warped the greenhouse around them. Plants grew and withered in rapid succession, and pockets of altered time and gravity formed unpredictably. Sabrina found herself having to navigate these anomalies while fending off Iris's attacks. She leaped through a time-slowed area, using the extra seconds to launch a flurry of Halloween spells. Pumpkin-headed scarecrows materialized, surrounding Iris and hampering her movements. Iris snarled in frustration, blasting the scarecrows away with a wave of spring magic. "You don't understand, Sabrina. With this power, I can reshape Hallowville into something greater." "Hallowville doesn't need reshaping," Sabrina retorted, deflecting a magical attack with a spectral shield. "Its balance is what makes it special." As they fought, Sabrina noticed that Iris's power seemed to wax and wane with the artifact's fluctuations. She realized that separating Iris from the artifact piece was key to ending the conflict. Catching Noah's eye, Sabrina communicated her plan with a subtle nod. Noah understood immediately, positioning himself closer to the altar while maintaining a defensive stance. Sabrina took a deep breath, focusing her magic. With a complex gesture, she created a massive illusion, a swarm of ghostly butterflies that filled the chamber. The butterflies glowed with an eerie light, their wings leaving trails of spectral energy as they swarmed around Iris. Momentarily distracted by the illusion, Iris faltered in her attacks. Noah seized the opportunity, lunging towards the altar. His hand closed around the artifact piece, just as Iris realized what was happening. "No!" Iris screamed, reaching out with her magic to try and stop Noah. But it was too late. As Noah's fingers touched the artifact, a massive surge of uncontrolled magic exploded outward. The energy engulfed the entire greenhouse, shattering the glass panes and causing the structure to groan ominously. Sabrina felt the wave of magic wash over her, a dizzying mix of spring and Halloween energies intertwined. She stumbled, momentarily overwhelmed by the raw power. Through the chaos, she saw Noah thrown backward by the force of the explosion, the artifact piece still clutched in his hand. Iris was knocked off her feet, her concentration broken and her ritual disrupted. Quill darted between them, its small body glowing brightly as it absorbed as much of the wild magic as it could. The hedgehog's efforts created a small pocket of stability around Sabrina and Noah, shielding them from the worst of the magical backlash. As the initial surge of energy began to subside, Sabrina struggled to her feet. The greenhouse was in ruins around them, plants withered and scorched, magical anomalies flickering in and out of existence. She spotted Noah nearby, looking dazed but still gripping the artifact piece tightly. "Noah," she called out, making her way towards him. "Are you all right?" Before Noah could respond, a groan from across the chamber caught their attention. Iris was stirring, her clothes singed and her hair wild. The glow in her eyes had dimmed, but the determination on her face remained. Sabrina tensed, ready for another round of magical combat. But as Iris pushed herself up, it was clear that the explosion had taken a toll on her as well. Her movements were sluggish, and her magical aura had diminished significantly. The artifact piece in Noah's hand pulsed with residual energy, reacting to the charged atmosphere. Sabrina knew they needed to act quickly before the situation spiraled out of control again. She turned to Noah, her voice urgent. "We need to get that piece out of here. If we can stabilize it, we might be able to start reversing the damage to Hallowville's magical balance." Noah nodded, still catching his breath. "What about Iris?" Sabrina glanced at the weakened witch, who was glaring at them with a mixture of anger and defeat. "We'll have to deal with her later. Right now, our priority is containing this magic before it causes any more damage." As they prepared to make their exit, Quill chirped urgently. The hedgehog's quills were standing on end, sensing another buildup of magical energy. Sabrina's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "The greenhouse! It's collapsing! We need to get out of here now!"